be amazed at what happens when you stop competing with people and you start collaborating with people. People at the bottom are like crabs in a barrel. People at the top are figuring out ways to collaborate and make their lives and their businesses better.
Authentic. It's really showing up, like you said, your best self, your original self. Coming to the table with your values, your principles.
You should be a doctor or a lawyer. Were they not thinking there's enough doctors and lawyers out there? Are there not enough accountants out there? You know, we let these things stop us. We let these people, because immediately in that moment, I was like, you know, and I'm not going to lie. It was a white man who said it to me, you know, so. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this podcast. I am your host, Shani Fay, and I am here with my dear friend, Miss Monique Pfeiffer of Solutions for the Silent. This is my entrepreneurial buddy right here. And so we have conversations, like I said, all the time, and we really wanted to bring those conversations to you all. So Monique, tell the people a little bit about what you do and who you serve.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me, Shani. It's nice to be on your podcast, and it's nice to talk to you and not necessarily being upon it. So
yes, because that's how we normally are.
So
face counter with the bonnets on.
Right. So it's good to be here. And just to share a little bit about me, I am based in Ohio, and in Ohio I'm a licensed mental health therapist. I have a business called Solutions for the Silent, and Solutions for the Silent is a personal development company where I provide mental health therapy, speaking engagements, speaking opportunities, trainings, as well as grief education.
Nice. Awesome. So today we are talking about authenticity and how that impacts entrepreneurship and leadership. We include leadership because as entrepreneurs, you are leaders, right? But also for, you know, all of my listeners are not necessarily entrepreneurs. And so for those who are in leadership and all the great things, we want you to feel included in the conversation as well. So why now this is your zone of genius, right? Is authenticity. And so tell me a little bit about why you think it's so important for us to be showing up as our best and authentic selves.
So absolutely. And it's something that I hold very personal, being authentic. And I think sometimes people misuse or misunderstand what the word authentic really means. When I'm talking authentic, it's really showing up, like you said, your best self, your original self. Coming to the table with your values, your principles, and being firm in that. And I think it's important as leaders and really just individuals to show up in every area of life, being comfortable with being who you are. Because when you are that way, so much value comes from that. Connection comes from that. More meaning comes from that. Trust comes from that. And it's really something that everyone should aspire to.
Yeah. Now, we were having a conversation earlier about how authenticity sometimes, like, because you were just talking about like the definition and understanding the definition. And sometimes if we're struggling to show up online authentically, as people say, well, you have to show up authentically. That's how people, you know, connect with you. It's easy to misunderstand that. Sometimes, like, I know for me, I've struggled with this because I'm one way with you because we have a relationship. I'm one way with my best friend. You know, she gets to see all the funny, all the silly, all the weird faces and all the things that, you know, everybody don't get to see. But when it comes to showing up online, sometimes I'm not exactly how to make that look, you know, and you mentioned earlier that it's not necessarily that you're being inauthentic. It's more about, well, how do I really frame that? So I'd like to expand on that conversation because I think it was really powerful and might help some people, might bless someone.
Absolutely. And I've shared how I struggle as well, right? For me, it's very important to be able to connect with personal relationships. Like, I just recently had an amazing trip with some people that I grew up with. And in that space, they saw Monique Pfeiffer, the Monique Pfeiffer that they knew when I was very young, trying to figure out life. So that was a safe space for me to just really let my hair down, right? People that I have known 20 plus years, they have a version of me. And it's still me. I'm still holding on to my values. I'm still holding on to my principles. But I feel like the relationships deem what side of me that you're going to get. The tricky part with being online is you're not going to get the fake Monique. You may get the more reserved Monique because I don't know you yet, but my values, my principles, what I stand for will come through. Now, there are a lot of people who get online and they call themselves being authentic, but sometimes when you pull the curtain back, we realize that they really weren't. They're putting on a show. And I think when you when you're a person who really values connection, when you're a person who really wants to make a difference, you're more mindful of how you're presenting yourself. And I think sometimes that can get in the way. I think we have to give ourselves permission to put the camera on and talk to the people as if they were in front of us, as if we have been friends forever. And honestly, when you're in a space of entrepreneurship or you have a brand or whatever you have, you're speaking to a specific audience. And I think if we allow ourselves to keep that in mind, the messaging will come through better and we'll feel more comfortable doing it.
You know, most people get into entrepreneurship because it's something that they overcame. It's something that they dealt with, and they're like, you know, now that I've overcome it, I want to be able to reach back and help other people to overcome the same thing. So if, you know, we're talking about connection and authenticity, if we remember, well, what would you have wanted to hear at that point? What would you have wished someone told you? And imagine that you're talking to that person. You're talking to that previous version of yourself, because that's really who most people's ideal client are, is that previous version of them. And so I think if we look at it like, you know how they tell you when you're doing public speaking to like imagine the crowd naked, you know, or like imagine them in their underwear so you feel, you know, less awkward. Imagine that you are talking to that person. Use the words that you would have resonated with them, because then that is, to me, comes across very authentic and it builds that connection. So you're not just talking to a camera, you are talking to, you know, a real person, because there is somebody out there who's going through that. So, I mean, when I was doing my YouTube videos, that was what was helpful for me, is pretending like I was talking to a friend. And she could tell, you know, like people who watched it, who knew me, they were like, I can tell when you're talking to me or one of us versus, you know, just talking into the abyss. So I think connection, like you mentioned several times, is very, very important. Who are you? Connect the dots with who you're talking to. So
absolutely, because we wouldn't be in the business if we weren't connected.
Facts.
Right? We wouldn't be in this business. And I think sometimes we allow ourselves to get in our own head. We make it bigger than it needs to be. And I liken that to when I'm talking to someone who is in a therapy session. I'm present in that moment, just like right now, I'm present with you. I'm not worried about who will listen to this later. I'm more concerned about the conversation that I'm having with you. And I think when we take it from that standpoint, looking into that camera, thinking about, what do I need to say to transform someone's life today? What messaging did I need to give across today? Do they need to hear that it's going to be okay? Do they need to hear that you're perfect the way that you are? Do they need to hear that the time is now? We all have a message for our ideal client. And I think we as leaders have to take the shackles off our mouth and open our mouths and proclaim the messaging that needs to come forth.
So good. So the thing about that, right? Like we were also talking earlier about Joshua 1:9 and how you had a revelation around that today. So that, what you just said, made me think about that part of the conversation, that we get very afraid to do things. We're awkward about showing up in a certain way because how are people going to look at us? What are they going to say? Are they not going to like it? And they won't. They won't. That's the reality, right? You're going to say something that's going to upset somebody or rub somebody the wrong way. That's just not your person. That's just not your person. But the person who is meant to hear you, the person who is meant to be blessed by that, will absolutely be blessed by that and say, dang, I'm glad I heard that word today. I needed that. So we were talking about Joshua 1:9 earlier. and how you had a revelation. And I want you share how you had this revelation, because this is one of my verses. I love this verse, but tell me what you got from it today.
So as I shared with you earlier, my scripture reading for today was Joshua 1:9. And I decided to read verse 1 through verse 9. And when I got to verse 9, the first part of the scripture said, "Have I not commanded you?" Now, I was reading the ESV version of the scripture. And when I read that, I was like, wait a minute.
Like, roll that back, Jesus. We ain't gonna run over there like a speed bump, Jesus.
I was like, wait, now,
run that back.
I've been in church all my life, right? And I've heard this scripture over and over and over and over again. But today, it hit me. Have I not commanded you? And as I was sharing with you earlier, I'm a rule follower. Yeah. I was a very obedient kid. If you told me to do something, I did it. Like, I didn't really talk back. I was that person. And I'm like, wait a minute. God has commanded me to be strong. He's commanded me to be courageous. He's commanded me not to be fearful. And then the part that just wrapped it up in a bow for me was, because I am with you. What? Shani, it was just like,
yeah.
And I will never be the same. I will not be the same. I have taken pride in doing it scared. That's how I started my business. I'm gonna do it scared. Didn't know what I was gonna do. Didn't know how I was gonna do it. 2014, 2015. I'm like, okay, God, you've given me this vision. I'm gonna do it. Scared to death, but I did it anyway. But now I have this revelation. Have I not commanded you?
Yeah.
I don't have to be afraid. He told me, don't be afraid. He told me to be courageous. He told me to be bold. He told me to be strong. So I got to take that mantra, doing it scared. I got to take it off the shelf. And now I'm doing it because he said so. Because I've been commanded. So I hope that blesses someone else, because that freed me. I was talking about shackles before. Your mindset, how you see things, can be a shackle. Take the shackle off your mind. Take the shackles off of your concept of who you are and what you're capable of doing. I've always rested in the fact that I was a God's kid. But if I'm truly a God's kid, I'm going to obey. And that's how that blessed me today.
So as you were talking, it made me think about how this particular scripture has touched both of us. But I was not always in the church as a kid, right? So you said, I've heard this verse over and over and over again. And today is when it hit me in my spirit, like, oh, you have been commanded. This verse found me when I was looking to make the transition from my traditional 9-to-5 job into entrepreneurship. And I felt like God was telling me that I needed to do this thing, but I was terrified. I was like, baby, we got a mortgage to pay. We got kids to feed. Like, there's no way. And so when I went to like a Bible study thing that they had at the job, and the pastor said, 1:9, have I not commanded you? Do not be afraid, for the Lord thy God is with you wherever you go. I was like, oh, and I'd never heard the verse before. So here it is. You've heard it over and over and over again. Me, never heard that verse before. But when I tell you, when God wants me to move, that this is the verse he throws in front of my face, I've heard it 8 times this week. I've had like a thought or a revelation about this one verse. So the fact that you even brought it up today was like, okay, God, I hear you. I'm doing it. I'm going to record, and I'm going to do the things, and I'm going to show up, because even in full transparency about, the podcast, right? Like, I've been working so hard on other people's podcasts that I, stopped showing up for my own. And then I thought, well, do I really want to do the same old, same thing that I was doing? And you've been there for it, friend, like through the ups and downs, and like, what are we doing? What's the direction? And, Pastor Sarah Jakes says it in her new book, Power Moves. She walks into a space and she says, what do I need to know? And who do I need to be? And so I just had to get real quiet with myself because I was showing up a lot. I was being really loud. And I said, okay, I need to hear from you, God, right? So less of me, more of you. What do I need to do in this season? And this circle of CEOs, it was, it started as I just wanted community for me, right? Because entrepreneurship is lonely. And I wanted somebody to be on the journey with me, but it was never meant to just stay right there. So I'm going to take a little segue and just say that if you are feeling lonely on your journey of entrepreneurship, because we know that it can be, and you don't have community, you can join us. We meet every single month. Me, Monique, we have also our other founding members are Shanika. You've probably seen her on my previous podcast. And then we have the beautiful Dr. Nakia Young. And so we meet every single month. And just we talk about life. How is this impacting us, not just in our, in entrepreneurship, but we got families that we see about, and, some are wives. And so we welcome you to join us. All the things more than just authenticity. But if anywhere you're showing up authentic, we definitely do it in that group. So I don't know. I didn't even have a question, girl.
I would love to add a little bit about the circle. It is one that provides that level of support you need, but it also provides nuggets. Like, I walk away each conversation with, "Ooh, I didn't know that. Let me try this."
Yeah.
And everybody, no one's a gatekeeper. People really want to see you shine and grow. And we've prayed together. We've laughed together. We hold each other's hands virtually. And I think it's amazing because we're all over Ohio, Georgia, Chicago, New York,
Florida. Yeah. Florida. But she goes between Florida and New York. But yeah, she lives in Florida.
So it's just amazing to be able to meet like-minded people who truly want community.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really like the whole desire behind this podcast is really community. So we are audacious, visionary entrepreneurs. And so sometimes people are going to look at us and not like what we're doing, or they're going to commend us for what we're doing, or they're going to criticize what we're doing. Everybody's going to have something to say. As a matter of fact, someone told me the other day, I was talking to this guy, and he says, well, everybody and their dog has a podcast. And I thought, okay, sir, where are we going with this conversation? He says, everybody and their dog has a podcast. And my first thought was to shrink and get small. Like, there's a lot of people who do have a podcast. But in reality, right, we're all fighting on Instagram platforms that we do not own, where there's 200 million businesses, but only 6% of Black-owned businesses have a podcast, right? So when we were growing up and people were saying, you should be a doctor or a lawyer, were they not thinking there's enough doctors and lawyers out there? Are there not enough accountants out there? We let these things stop us. We let these people, because immediately in that moment, I was like, and I'm not going to lie, it was a white man who said it to me, so like, I felt kind of small, I felt kind of small. And then I thought, girl, you are losing your mind right now. And he ended up asking me a question about his business. And then because me, like when you ask me about business, I'm very good at seeing where there's room for not just growth in a business, but like targeting what the problem is in a business and how you can shift it. And so immediately I saw what the problem was. Well, one was his arrogance, right? But the other was that, he needed to have more content. So this very thing that he just said everybody and their dog has, he should probably have one. Because he's out here solving a problem that nobody even knows that they have. But if he was generating content around this issue, then people would be like, oh, dang, like I need to do that. My point to saying that is that had I not decided to not even think about what this guy was saying or how he had, low-key jabbed what it is that I do as a podcast producer, if I had not chosen to do what God commanded me to do and show up in my authenticity, knowing that he had my back, then I wouldn't have been able to solve that man's problem. You know what I mean? Like, I would have shrank and felt small. And there's so many opportunities for us to feel small. But if we are doing what we are commanded to do, if we are showing up in our authenticity, then we are unstoppable. Really and truly unstoppable.
And to your point, Shani, I think when we have those moments of feeling small, or as you say, you hit me in my throat or cut my throat. I can't remember how you say that.
Like, just throat chop me, like, dang.
Right, throat chop. I think it's the opportunity to put the spotlight on, and especially if you can't rally from it, but you rallied in that situation. So I don't know if you realize it. That's the area that you grew in.
Yes, it is. I was really proud of myself after. I was like, okay, me. Yeah.
So I say that to say, sometimes I think God allows that to happen so that we can see our own growth.
Yeah.
And had that not happened, you would have never known that you've grown in that area, and you really are making those leaps and bounds on that inner work that you're doing for yourself. So kudos to you.
Thank you, friend. I appreciate that. Thank you. And I mean, after, I felt like, dang, why did I even feel small at all? Why was I? But I automatically thought that he must know more than me. One, he was an older white gentleman, right? And I thought, oh, well, he must know more than me. You know, I'm young. Maybe he knows something that I don't know. And he was making this face like, you know, he had to use the bathroom. And I was like, you know, like, it just felt so, and it was literally just me and him having this conversation. And then I thought, but you don't have to shrink. You don't have to play small, right? You know what you know, and it's okay if you don't know everything. That's okay too. Because a lot of times we struggle with that. I think especially like as Black women, we really do struggle with, like, I need to know all the things. I have to be the very best that I can be. Where other people can just show up, I have to be excellent, right? We have this Black excellence thing. But it is okay not to know things. Like, we really got to give ourselves some grace about not knowing all the things. We are putting more pressure on ourselves than we have to. And that is not showing up authentically, you know? Because you're trying to be something that you are not. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on that.
No, that's worth more than 2.
Yeah, is it? Can I get $2? Let me get a 20. So, but I do think showing up authentically has a big role to play in entrepreneurship. I've seen where some of like the people who are seeing the most success, they are just being who they are, like their natural selves. As a matter of fact, I saw a guy today on Instagram. I forget his name. It's like Landon something. And he was talking about autism. And you could see the frustration in it. And there's a lot been popping up about autism between like the Amanda Seals conversations that are going on. But this guy shows up and he says, I would much rather be playing golf today, but I'm having this conversation with you. He says, I've told people that I have autism, and, you know, that when I was a kid, like, he got bullied. And it was you could tell there was a place of, that's trauma for him. He said, but the only place that they could not find me was on the golf course. Right. And then recently people have seen him playing golf and they're like, oh, but you're so good at this. There's no way you're autistic. Right. That was the response. And you could tell how upset he was in telling this story. And he says, but you know what? I am, you know, this is my name. And I think his name is Landon. And I have autism, and I'm going to show up in my truth from now on. Right. And the comment section was blowing up. Like, I've seen this guy do skits and funny videos and all that. And of course he's, you know, getting very, he's hilarious, right? So he gets a lot of good stuff. But that video, the amount of people who showed support, the amount of people who commented and liked, that is what it means to be able to show up authentically. Not that you have to bare your entire soul, but this is who I am. Take it or leave it. If it ain't for you, it ain't for you. And I think we need to do more of that. Like, this is who I am, and it's okay if people don't like it. It's all right, because there's going to be people who love it. So, yeah, that was
I
powerful.
think one of the things also that entrepreneurs, leaders struggle with in authenticity is really when they have not dealt with themselves. And what I mean by that is you have to have a moment of, and it sounds like Landon did, you have to have a moment of coming
Come to
I'm not gonna-
Jesus.
Thank you. I was trying not to say it, friend. I was like,
Come to Jesus moment.
but you really do. Like, you
Yeah.
really, and it looks different for everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
But really, what I'm thinking right now is when you really look at yourself in the mirror and say, who am I?
Yeah.
I have all the things. I have the career. I have the family. I have the money or whatever you have. But who am I?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when you don't know who you truly are, you've compromised yourself to get those things, to get the cars, to get the women, to get the men, to get the jewelry, to go on the lavish vacations. You've compromised yourself. And it comes to a point where there is emptiness and loneliness when you are not truly being who you are. You're showing up certain ways because the producer said you had to, the agent said you had to, your mom, your dad, your spouse.
Yeah.
Everybody has told you what you should be, how you should act, and it's no longer working for you. And you're miserable. And guess what happens when you're miserable? It spills out on all those that you're leading. It spills out all over your work as an entrepreneur. And eventually, if you do not fix it, everything you'll lose.
Yeah.
And it's not a hard thing per se to fix it, but you got to be willing to do the work. And the work, I think I was sharing with you, Shani. I'm sure I did at one point in time. But the work is oftentimes ugly. It's really sitting with yourself, dealing with your mindset, working on how you're showing up. And are you empathetic? Are you evil? Are you mean? Why are you that way? Are you working on those wounds that you had in your youth? Are you willing to be open to criticism and fixing those places in yourself that need to be fixed? Do you have emotional intelligence? Can you really be empathetic and self-aware and being willing to help other people? Leadership requires all of that. Entrepreneurship will require all of that. The thing about being an entrepreneur, you will feel naked as an entrepreneur. It will expose all of the flaws in you. It will put you to your knees at times. Because as Shani said earlier, and that's why it's so important to be around community, is you feel so alone.
Yeah.
In this quest for this mission that you have to make a difference. So it's so important to work on you so that you can be the best leader that you can be, as well as being the best person as an entrepreneur.
And I like that you said that it shows up differently for everybody, right? Because for some people in that season of that, come to Jesus moment, it might look like getting online and speaking your truth. For others, it might look like being quiet and being reserved. And so, again, full transparency, for me, I've been going through a come to Jesus moment. He sat me all the way down. Like, I need you to sit down and I need you to really hear from me. And at first it felt like I was on punishment. It felt like he had put me in timeout. But then it felt like, if Jesus is supposed to be my friend and I'm supposed to talk to him, and he is, then why don't I talk to him more often? And not just when I need something, right? Not just when I need something. So I thought, man, and I was actually driving in the car and I talked to my daughters and I said, Jesus is your friend? And they were like, yeah. I'm like, well, how often do you talk to him? And they're like, oh, I don't know. And I don't listen, they are 11 and 13, right? But so I was asking them, but I was really asking myself the question. I talk to my best friend almost every day. Like we said, I talk to you like 3-4 times a week. But how often do I talk to Jesus, and not just like, oh, Jesus, give me strength, but like really sitting down, because a friendship is a conversation, not just me talking to you, telling you what I need from you. Lord, give me strength. I need you, Jesus, and all of that. But what do you need from me? How can I be a better friend to you? And so in going through that process, it really has helped me to be more authentic for myself, because I understand not only who I am, but whose I am. And that is the piece around that is remarkable. And it is priceless, the type of peace that you can get with knowing whose you are, even if everything is not going the way that you want it to go. Even if you prayed for something and he has not delivered on it yet, you can still know that, like, but that's my friend. My friend has my back all the time, So it's really, and as you say with entrepreneurship, it is it can be a lonely journey, but it also exposes you. That no lies detected there, right? It's like being in marriage. I've never been married, but I've seen my parents who have been married for 40 something, long time. They've been married for a while, and I've seen there's no hiding. So if you are on this journey of entrepreneurship, if you've been called to this journey of entrepreneurship, then you have also been called to heal in places that you've been avoiding. You've been called to show up for people in a way that you never thought you'd show up for them before. You have been called to show up for yourself in a way that you've never been, thought that you'd been showing up before. But you have to, again, back to Joshua 1:9, right? You have been commanded. If this is something that you feel God called you to, then you have been commanded and you have to show up. There is no option. And so I wish you the best of luck on this journey, because it's beautiful, but it is scary. And you feel like you're on a roller coaster all the time. And friends help. But friends who get it, friends who get entrepreneurship help. Those who do not understand entrepreneurship, they can love you. They be like, girl, I rock with you, but when you're trying to figure out, yes, but how do I price this thing? Okay, like, how do I price this? They'll tell you, oh, well, you should just charge like, $1 million. Girl, get off my phone. You can't do that. So this has been good. We could probably talk for like another 3 hours, because sometimes our conversations do go kind of long, but we're not going to hold y'all for all that time. If anything, we will bring you back, Miss Monique. But do you have any final words for the people? Any, nuggets of wisdom for them before we go?
So first, I would love to come back, and I absolutely enjoyed this brief conversation. So like you said, we talk a lot and sometimes very long. But I think that's when revelation happens. That's when healing happens. That's when, hope happens, right? Yeah. So I think to any nuggets or anything I would want to end on or just add to the conversation is hope. Sometimes as a leader, as an entrepreneur, there are times when we give up. The team doesn't know.
Mm-hmm.
The partner doesn't know. But we give up. We've given up hope. And yes, quarter one was successful, and quarter 3 of 2023 was successful. But as you're looking at 2024, you've given up hope. You feel like you can't do it anymore. You feel like no one believes in you. And honestly, you don't believe in yourself anymore. But don't give up hope. You were assigned to be in the role that you're in for a purpose. You have to connect back to your why. You have to connect back to your purpose. And then lean into that. Be willing to sit with yourself and identify, where did it start? Where did I stop believing in myself? Where did I stop giving up on the dream? And I think, and I haven't met you, don't even know you. this is the first time you're hearing my voice, but I think it started when you realized you weren't showing up authentically. I think it started with you knowing that you wanted more and you really felt like a puppet, just going through the motions. But it doesn't have to be that way. There is hope to connect with you, the original you, the authentic you, and still be dominant, still be attractive, still be inspiring, still be magnetic. There's hope. So don't give up on you. Don't give up on the dream. Because even though I don't know you, I believe in you. You can reach me at info@MoniquePfeiffer.com. Again, that's info@MoniquePfeiffer.com.
Awesome. And we'll drop all the links in the description box below if you're watching on YouTube, or we'll put it in the show notes if you are listening to us on like Apple, Spotify, everywhere the pods are casted. This has been a really good conversation, and we're definitely going to do it again because there's so much more. Like, we've talked about different series that we want to bring forward, because I think the mindset stuff that happens in entrepreneurship should be talked about more often. It is very irresponsible sometimes how I hear these things being talked about, and like mindset, well, you just got to shift and just do the thing. Okay, sometimes I do believe it's a decision, and everything that comes from that is an opportunity to stand 10 toes down on what you said you were going to do and what you wanted. But also shifting those mindsets is a very real process. And so I think, to have a responsible conversation, I would love to have you on to talk about that and how we can bless the people. So if that's something that y'all are interested in, if that's something that you want, please let me know. Send us a message or put it in the comment section below so that we know how to serve you better. And so again, also we'll put the links down in the chat if you want to join us for our Circle of CEOs. We meet I think it's the third Monday of every month that we meet. And so we would love to have you there to share and glean from one another. You will be amazed at what happens when you stop competing with people and you start collaborating with people. People at the bottom are like crabs in a barrel. People at the top are figuring out ways to collaborate and make their lives and their businesses better. So we'll see you all in the next one. All right. Bye.
Bye.